My dear friends, let me start with the truth. Most people learn too late. Two people wake up in the same city, same air, same year, same chances. One repeats, "Nothing ever works for me." The other says, "I'll find a way, no matter what." They face the same problems. They feel the same fear. But 5 years later, their lives don't even look related. Not because life loved one more, not because fate chose sides, but because life obeyed their inner dialogue. You don't attract what you want, you attract what you consistently think and repeatedly speak. And every single day, you are training life how to treat you. The first key point is that your mind is always broadcasting. Even when you think nothing important is happening, every quiet thought you repeat is like a signal sent into the background of your life. You may believe your thoughts stay inside your head, unnoticed, harmless, but they don't. They shape how you stand, how you speak, how you react, and how you decide. Long before life responds on the outside, it has already accepted your inner message. The mind does not wait for perfect clarity. It works with whatever you give it again and again. And whatever you feed it most often becomes its default direction. Think about how a radio works. You don't hear every frequency at once. You hear the one you're tuned into. Your mind works the same way. When you keep thinking, "I'm behind, I'm unlucky, I always mess things up," your mind tunes into evidence that proves it right. Not because it wants to hurt you, but because it wants to be consistent. The mind is loyal to repetition, not truth. It doesn't judge your thoughts, it follows them. That's why two people can face the same moment and walk away with completely different futures. One mind was tuned to fear, the other was tuned to growth. Most people are not held back by lack of ability. They are held back by the constant background noise they've learned to live with. That voice that whispers, "Be careful," when it should say, "Try." The voice that says, "This isn't for people like you." Over time, that voice stops sounding like fear and starts sounding like logic. But it is still a broadcast. And when you listen to it long enough, you begin to move through life as if that message is already proven. You hesitate, you shrink, you delay, not because you are weak, but because your mind has been trained to expect less. Your thoughts don't push life directly, they push you. And you are the one walking into every situation. If your thoughts tell you the world is against you, you walk in defensive. If your thoughts tell you nothing will work, you stop looking for ways. If your thoughts say you don't belong, you speak softer, you take less space, you leave earlier. Life doesn't block you. You block yourself quietly, politely, without even realizing it. The broadcast becomes behavior. The behavior becomes habit. The habit becomes identity. But here is something powerful that most people miss. You don't need to control every thought. You need to notice which ones you allow to stay. Thoughts will come and go. Some are tired thoughts, some are borrowed from past failures, some are echoes of things said to you long ago. You don't have to fight them, you just don't have to host them. When you stop repeating a thought, it loses its power. When you stop believing a thought, it stops directing you. Awareness is the moment you take the microphone back. Imagine standing at a train station. Trains arrive all day. You don't get on every train. You choose. Thoughts are the same. The problem is not that negative thoughts arrive. The problem is that people sit down, unpack their bags, and live there. The moment you realize you can choose which thought you ride, something shifts inside you. You don't become fearless, you become intentional. And intention slowly changes the signal you send out into your life, into your actions, into your future unfolding moment by moment. The first key point is that words are not just sounds you release into the air, they are directions you give to your life. Every sentence you repeat carries weight, even the casual ones, even the jokes, even the things you say without thinking. You may believe words only describe how you feel, but in reality, they decide how you move. The moment a word leaves your mouth, it doesn't disappear. It settles somewhere inside you, quietly shaping your expectations. Over time, those expectations begin to shape your choices. And those choices slowly shape the life you recognize as your own. Most people speak as if their words are powerless. as if they are only reacting to reality. But notice this carefully. You never say, I feel weak today, without your body responding. You never say, this is too hard for me, without your energy dropping a little. Words are instructions the mind follows without debate. The mind does not ask if the command is fair. It does not ask if it is temporary. It simply accepts it as a rule. And once a rule is accepted, behavior adjusts to obey it. There is a reason. See, certain patterns keep repeating in your life. It's not luck, it's not fate, it's familiarity. When you repeatedly say, this always happens to me, you're not predicting the future, you're preparing for it. Your mind begins to recognize that sentence as a map. It tells you what to expect, what to tolerate, and what to stop trying to change. Soon, you don't even notice the words anymore. They become background noise. And the most dangerous beliefs are the ones that feel normal. Listen to how people speak when they are tired or disappointed. They don't say, I'm struggling right now. They say, I'm bad at this. They don't say, this failed. They say, I fail. One moment turns into an identity. One experience becomes a label. And once you label yourself, you begin to live as if the label is true. Not because it is, but because you've repeated it long enough for it to feel familiar. Familiar feels safe, even when it's limiting. Your words shape how others see you, but more importantly, they shape how you see yourself when no one is watching. The way you talk to yourself in quiet moments becomes the tone of your inner world. If that tone is harsh, life feels heavy. If that tone is hopeless, effort feels pointless. But when your words become steady, calm, and intentional, something inside you relaxes. You stop fighting yourself, you begin to trust yourself, and that trust changes how you show up. Changing your language is not about pretending everything is fine, it's about choosing words that give you room to grow instead of locking you in place. There is a difference between saying I can't and saying I'm learning. One shuts the door, the other keeps it open. One drains energy, the other creates patience. Words are small, but they steer direction. A slight change in language, repeated daily, slowly shifts the path you walk on. You don't need louder words, you need truer ones. Words that don't attack you when you're already tired. Words that don't sentence you for being human. When you speak with awareness, your mind stops working against you. It starts working with you. And in that quiet partnership between thought and speech, your life begins to respond differently, not suddenly, not magically, but steadily, as if it's been waiting for clearer instructions all along. The third key point is that what you focus on quietly grows, whether you want it to or not. Your attention is not neutral. It behaves like sunlight. Whatever you place it on begins to expand in your awareness, in your emotions, and eventually in your life. You may think you are simply noticing things, but notice how noticing turns into dwelling, and dwelling turns into shaping your mood. The mind cannot deeply focus on two opposite things at the same time. When your focus stays on what's missing, what went wrong, or what hurt you, those things begin to feel larger than they truly are. You might have experienced this without realizing it. On a day when something small goes wrong, suddenly everything feels off. The delay feels personal, the silence feels heavy, the obstacles feel intentional. Nothing new has happened, but your focus has narrowed. It's like holding a magnifying glass too close to a single scratch and then believing the whole surface is broken. The problem isn't your life in that moment. It's the lens you're using to look at it. And lenses decide clarity. The mind is constantly searching for confirmation. If you focus on struggle, your mind starts collecting proof that life is hard. It remembers past failures more easily. It notices resistance faster than progress. Not because it wants you to suffer, but because it wants consistency. Focus becomes instruction. Instruction becomes pattern. Over time, the pattern feels like reality. And once something feels like reality, you stop questioning it, you adapt to it, you build your expectations around it. But focus also works in the opposite direction, quietly and patiently. When you begin to notice effort instead of outcome, growth instead of speed, intention instead of perfection, something shifts inside you. You don't suddenly become confident, you become present. And presence changes everything. You start seeing options where you once saw dead ends. You start responding instead of reacting. The same life is happening, but you are meeting it differently because your attention is no longer stuck in one narrow corner. Think of focus like the way you walk through a crowded room. If you keep staring at the obstacles, you bump into them. If you look ahead calmly, your body finds space to move. Life is crowded with uncertainty, opinions, fears, and noise. Where you place your eyes determines how smoothly you move through it. Focus is not about ignoring problems. It's about deciding which ones deserve your energy and which ones don't. Many people believe their emotions control their focus, but more often, focus controls emotion. When you replay a mistake, the feeling grows stronger. When you replay gratitude, calm grows instead. When you repeatedly focus on what you cannot control, helplessness increases. When you focus on the smallest action you can take, strength returns. Focus doesn't remove difficulty, it changes your relationship with it. And relationships determine how long something has power over you. This is why discipline of focus is quiet work. No one sees it, no one applauds it. It happens in moments when you choose not to scroll, not to complain, not to revisit the same thought for the 100th time. It's the decision to guide your attention gently back to what matters, again and again. Not perfectly, not forcefully, just intentionally. Over time, that intention shapes your inner world, and your inner world begins shaping the choices you make, without effort, without noise, without needing permission from anyone else. The fourth key point is that complaining feels harmless, but it quietly builds the very life you're trying to escape. Most people complain without thinking, the same way they breathe, about traffic, about people, about timing, about how unfair things feel. It sounds normal. It even sounds honest. But every complaint is a moment where you rehearse what you don't want. You bring it closer by giving it attention, emotion, and repetition. Complaining doesn't release pressure the way people believe. It trains the mind to stay locked on what's wrong. When you complain, your body responds before you realize it. Your shoulders tighten, your breath shortens, your tone hardens. Even if the problem is small, your nervous system treats it like a signal that danger is everywhere. Over time, this becomes a default state. You wake up already irritated. You enter conversations already defensive. You expect resistance before it appears. Life begins to feel heavy, not because it is, but because you are carrying it that way. Complaining doesn't lighten the load. It teaches you to hold it tighter. There is something subtle but powerful happening when you complain often. Your mind starts believing that problems are permanent and personal. You stop seeing situations as temporary. Everything feels like a pattern. This always happens. People are always like this. Nothing ever changes. These words shrink possibility. They turn moments into walls. And once you believe the wall is solid, you stop looking for doors. You don't even notice that you've stopped trying. You just tell yourself you're being realistic. Complaining also changes how you relate to others. It may feel like connection, but it slowly builds distance. People begin to feel drained around constant negativity. Even if they care about you, conversations become heavier, solutions feel unwelcome, advice feels like an attack. Without realizing it, you push away the very support you need. And then you complain about feeling alone. Not because you want to be isolated, but because complaining has become the language you use to process life. This doesn't mean you should ignore pain or pretend everything is fine. There is a difference between expressing and repeating. Expressing is honest and brief. Complaining is circular and endless. One looks for clarity, the other looks for confirmation. When you express a problem with responsibility, your mind stays open. When you complain without intention, your mind closes. You relive the same moment again and again, teaching your brain that this is where attention belongs. Responsibility shifts everything. The moment you ask, "What can I do here?" Instead of, why does this happen to me? Energy returns. You may not control the situation, but you regain control of yourself. And that control changes how life responds to you. Responsibility doesn't blame, it empowers. It reminds you that even in discomfort, you still have influence. Complaining gives that influence away. Quietly, repeatedly. Gratitude is not about listing blessings. It's about choosing a different lens. It's the ability to say, this is hard, but I'm still learning, instead of this is unbearable. That shift doesn't deny reality. It reframes it. And when the frame changes, the picture feels different. You start noticing small things going right, small strengths, small progress. These things were always there. Complaining just trained you to overlook them. When you stop feeding what you dislike, it slowly loses its grip, not because life changed overnight, but because you did. The fifth key point is that the voice you hear most often is the one you never speak out loud. Long after conversations end and the world goes quiet, that inner voice keeps talking. It comments on your effort. It judges your mistakes. It reminds you of what didn't work before you even try again. You may not remember when that voice formed, but it has been with you for a long time, shaping how safe or unsafe life feels. And the way that voice speaks to you slowly becomes the way you experience everything. That inner voice often sounds reasonable. It doesn't shout, it explains. It says things like, be careful, or don't get your hopes up, or you should know better by now. It sounds like protection, but over time it becomes restriction. It tries to keep you from disappointment by keeping you small. And when you listen to it without question, you start confusing caution with wisdom. You stop calling fear by its real name. You start calling it maturity. What makes this voice so powerful is that you rarely challenge it. If someone spoke to you the way your inner voice does on hard days, you would step away. But because the voice is inside you, you accept it as truth. You believe it knows you better than anyone else. You forget that it learned its language from past pain, past failure, and past rejection. It is not a prophet. It is a record. And records can be updated. The way you speak to yourself decides how quickly you recover when things go wrong. When the inner voice attacks, setbacks feel personal. One mistake feels like proof. Shame grows faster than understanding. But when the inner voice is steady, setbacks become information. You learn, you adjust, you keep moving. The situation hasn't changed, but your ability to stay present has. And presence is what keeps pain from turning into identity. Self-talk also decides how much energy you have available. When your inner voice is harsh, everything costs more effort. Starting feels heavier. Continuing feels exhausting. You spend energy fighting yourself before you even face the task. But when the voice is supportive, even challenges feel lighter. Not easier, but lighter. You move with yourself instead of against yourself. That alignment creates momentum without forcing it. Changing the inner voice is not about saying perfect things. It's about tone. It's about choosing language that doesn't abandon you when you struggle. You don't need to praise yourself constantly. You need to stay fair, honest without being cruel, encouraging without denying reality. Saying this is hard and I'm still here is more powerful than pretending everything is fine. That kind of self-talk builds trust, and trust builds courage. Over time, the way you speak inside becomes the atmosphere you live in. If it is tense, life feels tight. If it is patient, life feels possible. You don't become confident all at once. You become kinder to yourself moment by moment. And that kindness is not weakness. It is stability. It gives you something solid to stand on when the world feels uncertain, when outcomes are unclear, when you're still becoming who you haven't met yet. The sixth key point is that consistency always matters more than intensity. Most people believe they need a sudden surge of energy, a dramatic change, a perfect day to make progress. They wait for motivation to strike like lightning, then they think success will follow. But life doesn't respond to storms. Life responds to steady streams. One intense effort can create excitement, maybe even a temporary result, but it rarely shapes a life. What shapes a life is the quiet, repeated effort that becomes invisible before it becomes undenia. Consistency teaches the mind and the body a language of trust. When you repeat an action, a thought, a habit day after day, you stop negotiating with yourself. You stop hoping for perfect timing or ideal conditions. The repetition itself says, I am here, I am committed, I am doing this again, even if it is small. Over time, those tiny repetitions compound into rhythm, and rhythm turns into momentum that feels unstoppable because it is no longer dependent on motivation, it is embedded in who you are. Most people underestimate how much small, consistent choices determine the future. 1 minute spent practicing a skill may feel insignificant. One kind word to someone may feel invisible. One quiet decision to face discomfort may feel unimportant. But these choices, repeated, act like drops of water on stone. They shape character, they shape perspective, they shape opportunities. Life does not notice each drop, but the stone slowly changes and eventually it cannot be ignored. Consistency also builds resilience in ways intensity cannot. When you push hard for a day, you may feel strong, but you also feel exhausted. When you show up consistently, even when you don't feel like it, you begin to see how capable you are of enduring. You learn patience. You learn persistence. You learn that results do not always appear immediately, but they are quietly forming under the surface. You stop expecting life to reward grand gestures and start trusting the cumulative power of steady effort. The most overlooked part of consistency is the mental change it creates. When you act consistently, your brain begins to predict that you are reliable, capable, and determined. Confidence doesn't come from a single success. It comes from witnessing yourself do the same thing over and over, even when it's hard. Each repetition whispers, you can do this again. You can face what comes. You are not defined by one failure or one triumph. You are defined by the practice of showing up. That internal shift is more powerful than any external validation. Consistency is also forgiving in ways intensity is not. You will falter, you will skip a day, you will stumble. But a life built on consistent effort is not destroyed by one misstep. It is flexible, adaptable, forgiving, because it is anchored in habit, not in fleeting emotion. The rhythm continues. The momentum continues. You simply pick up where you left off. One day missed does not erase the work of thousands of other days, and this understanding removes fear from action and replaces it with trust in the process. Ultimately, consistency transforms ordinary actions into extraordinary outcomes. The small choices you make quietly every day, the words you speak to yourself, the focus you maintain, the effort you repeat, combine in ways that feel magical only when viewed from a distance. You do not need perfect energy. You do not need dramatic breakthroughs. You need patience, persistence, and the humility to keep returning to the day after day, because life always rewards those who speak through their actions, steadily, without pause, without exaggeration, and without waiting for the perfect moment. The seventh key point is that you must speak the life you want to live before it even exists. Most people wait for evidence, for proof, for permission, as if reality owes them a sign. But life doesn't work backward. It responds to what you declare, not what you quietly hope for. When you speak clearly and intentionally, you are planting stakes in the ground for your future. You are telling the world and yourself that you will not be passive. You are not waiting for circumstances to decide your direction. You are giving life a map to follow. Words have a momentum of their own. When you say, I am becoming better every day, it may feel small at first. You think it's just a statement, a habit of speaking positively. But every time you repeat it, your body, your mind, your attention align a little closer to that truth. The environment doesn't change immediately, but you start noticing opportunities, connections, and actions you previously overlooked. The sentence itself carries weight because it reminds your mind of what is possible before proof arrives. It is a rehearsal for reality. Many people resist speaking boldly because it feels dishonest when the world hasn't caught up. They say, "I can't claim that yet," or "it isn't true." But the truth is that waiting for life to confirm itself first is the quietest form of surrender. You are letting the circumstances decide your energy, your courage, your belief. Speaking intentionally is different. It is choosing the frequency before the signal is visible. You are aligning yourself with the life you are willing to grow into, rather than the one you are stuck describing. Speaking the life you want also changes your relationship with fear. Fear thrives in silence and hesitation. When you quietly hope, it whispers louder. When you declare, even softly, it begins to shrink. Fear can no longer dominate because it now has a companion. Action disguised as language. Saying, "I am capable of this challenge," is not a lie. It is a choice to refuse victimhood. The words themselves create a pathway through the tension, making the next step easier, clearer, more deliberate. Notice how words ripple outward. When you speak your intentions, your energy shifts in ways subtle and visible. People respond differently. Opportunities appear where they might not have before. Doors that seemed closed begin to show hinges. The language you use signals to the world that you are participating, that you are present, that you are claiming your stake in what is possible. Words are like a quiet pulse sent outward, carrying intention, and the universe notices even when it doesn't respond immediately. Speaking intentionally does not require perfection. You will stumble, you will doubt, you will sometimes say the words without believing them fully. But repetition is stronger than conviction in a single moment. Every time you speak toward the life you desire, your internal rhythm strengthens. Doubt still visits, but it meets a voice that refuses to surrender. The words become scaffolding, holding you steady until your actions can fill the structure. Language builds the frame, and life slowly fills it in. Ultimately, speaking the life you want is a declaration of ownership over your becoming. It is refusing to let the world define your limits, to let the past dictate your future, to let silence or hesitation decide what is possible. When you say, "I am learning, I am growing, I am becoming the person I seek to be," you are not lying. You are calling yourself forward. You are giving life instructions to follow, not orders to ignore. And as you speak slowly, unmistakably, the life you articulate begins to meet you halfway. Every thought you carry, every word you speak, every focus you choose is quietly shaping the world you inhabit. Life doesn't wait for permission, and it doesn't respond to wishful thinking alone. It responds to the signals you send, the energy you maintain, and the reality you quietly build through repetition, awareness, and intention. What you feed your mind becomes your daily experience. What you allow your voice to declare becomes your unseen guide. The life you want is not somewhere far away. It is already forming in the space between your thinking and your speaking. There is a subtle power in understanding that you are not helpless in the currents of circumstance. Even small shifts, choosing what to notice, choosing what to say, choosing where to direct your attention, can ripple into outcomes you could never have predicted. You don't need everything to change at once. You don't need perfection. You only need to begin shaping the internal world you carry into each day, quietly, steadily, consistently. That inner alignment will move outward in ways that feel natural, inevitable, and right. Trust that the energy you cultivate is far more influential than the obstacles around you. The quiet discipline of focus, the mindful choice of words, the care you give to your inner voice. These are not abstract ideas. They are the scaffolding of a life lived with integrity, with intention, and with clarity. Every moment you speak toward possibility, every thought you feed with purpose, you are planting seeds whose fruits will appear in time. Your life is listening always, and it will answer to what you consistently nurture. You don't have to force transformation or demand instant results. Transformation begins in small, deliberate ways, in noticing what you give attention to, in speaking gently yet firmly to yourself, in recognizing the choices that form your habits and, quietly, your identity. It begins in the calm awareness that your inner world is inseparable from your outer experience. When your inside changes, your outside follows. Not because life is easy, but because your alignment with it becomes undeniable. Carry this understanding with you. The mind, the words, the focus, the voice, they are not distractions from life. They are life itself. The reality you inhabit is shaped by what you allow, what you declare, and what you consistently practice. You are not at the mercy of circumstances. You are the steward of your inner world, and that stewardship quietly directs everything else. Every choice you make, every thought you allow, every sentence you speak is part of the architecture of the life you are creating, and so step forward with a sense of quiet responsibility and calm authority over yourself. There is strength in consistency, patience in awareness, and clarity in mindful speech. You do not need to be loud or forceful. You need only to be steady, intentional, and unwavering in the way you inhabit your mind, your words, and your focus. Life will meet you there. It always does. Let yourself walk into each day with the knowledge that what you think and what you speak is not temporary or trivial. It is real. It is shaping you. And if you tend to it with care, honesty, and awareness, you will find that life bends not in dramatic leaps, but in quiet, profound ways. Until the life you speak and the life you live are no longer separate but one.